Welcome back. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual business coach. I'm here as always with my best friend in Boquete, Katherine Loranger. Loranger, I'll get it. And
Catherine with a K.
Katherine with a K,
That's
spiritual
what
business coach,
matters.
kick ass, spiritual business coach. And today we are going to finish our holistic hiring series. We're going to talk about firing, also known as don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, right? And so the rule of thumb for most business leadership classes out there is hire slow, fire fast. That's the rule of thumb. So,
Mm.
if you're when you're hiring somebody, give them pieces and move as you go, and see if they're going to make it before you hand them the whole enchilada. But on the way out is like the minute you see those red flags coming up and you know that they're going to be a problem, you need to get rid of them quick before they do too much damage, right? Don't
And that
agonize over it.
and that you're not investing all that energy into it too, right?
Yeah, well, and the time to train them and all the other stuff, right?
Mm.
So, I just realized I forgot to put my do not disturb on, so I'm doing that. And so when we're looking at firing, let's talk about red flags. So, do you have some ideas about the red flags that you
Um,
look for?
like dishonesty, padding time,
Mhm.
screwing things up and not taking accountability. Yeah, sorry, that was a question I was kind of
Manipulation.
unprepared for.
Yeah,
So,
sorry. I'll
yeah.
add some in, not getting along with other team members, uh, things that there are some things that you can't teach that you need, right?
Mhm.
So like being able
Mhm.
to understand if you understand something or not, being able to think through things. If you recognize that you have a job that requires a lot of independent thinking and they are not
Well,
an
like a
independent
values incongruency.
values
That
mismatch
another
is a
one.
big one. Yeah,
Yeah.
if they're going to be
Yeah.
hard selling your soft
Yeah.
sell people, that would not go well. Yeah.
I'm kind of like mentally going back in my mind over people I've had to terminate and then people
Right.
I knew I had to terminate but didn't do it quick enough and kind of what
Right.
were those? Yeah.
Yeah. Lack of attention to detail for a detail oriented job, you know,
Mm-hmm.
lack of ability to have empathy in a customer facing job.
Not able to take feedback.
Oh, big one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The yeah, just anything like that. So,
Someone who's super defensive,
oh yeah.
someone who's really ego driven can also be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, super sensitive, can't be in the corporate environment or, the company environment without having a problem, There are different people who are and sometimes it's an environment that would and I'm not saying to foster this kind of environment, but I'm remembering back when I was being hired as a manager for a real estate office. I had the guy who owned the company looked at me and said, "Don't come here if you don't like to be sexually harassed." And I looked at him and said, "If you can make me feel sexually harassed, I will give you a prize,"
Mhm.
because
Bring it.
he was just not that guy, right? He was just not that guy, but he liked to make dirty jokes and he just didn't want to deal with the bullshit
Mm.
of, somebody who didn't want to be around dirty jokes. I'm like, good. Yeah, I'm like, I'm good. We're fine. You won't bother me,
But
right?
that's someone who is sexually harassing people. Like that's also a red flag, to be
That is a
clear.
red flag, but I
That's a
wasn't,
red flag. Yeah.
oddly, I didn't have a problem with it at the time. But it's like there are environments that people can live with and environments that they can't, right? And
Mm.
so, if you know your environment is a high stress environment and people are not high stress people, you need to be clear about that. I had a client that I worked with years ago who was a real estate agent who was hiring assistants, and she kept talking her clients into being her assistants. And then she would go away on a retreat to, some sort of workshop that she had to attend, and then they would quit while she was gone every time. We were in this
Mm.
program together every quarter, and every quarter people were quitting. And so I said, "I'm coming. You're going to pay for my ticket. I'm coming. I'm going to hire you an assistant." Right. And what I did was, because I knew she was a high intensity, high stress person who just was going to throw things at people, I, I undersold the position. I said, "This is going to be really hard. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be high stress. You're going to
Mm.
be constantly getting whacked in the face with new things. You're going to have to be able to adapt and roll on your feet and do the whole thing." I mean, I made it sound like a really, really miserable job. And the people who were still excited about it were the ones who were going to survive it.
Yeah.
And in fact, we hired her somebody, and then 7 years later, the last time I checked
Yeah.
in, they were still working together.
So
So,
realistic expectations.
yes. realistic expectations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, it's that whole thing of be honest with yourself about who you are. If you're somebody who is super chill and easy going and, says everything in great detail and is great at mentoring people and whatever, fantastic. Then you're going to be an easier boss to work for. But if you're somebody who's running around like a chicken with your head cut off, you've constantly got a million projects going, you've got to be able to throw things at somebody and have them know what they understand and what they don't understand and be able to ask questions efficiently and keep track of the details and whatever. If that's who you are, then that you need to hire for that. And if they're not that
Mm-hmm.
person, if that shows up, you need to let them go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
And
where
I
it's,
think I think when you get to the point where you realize, okay, this is not the right person for this position,
yeah.
you want to have set it up like in the hiring process. So in your, kind of like agreement, your work agreement, you've got the termination clause, or you've got, you kind of got some language in there about how that works.
Yeah.
And if it's a contractor versus an employee, your obligations are different for
Yeah.
sure. So you want to make sure that you are in line with those obligations, but you also want to you want to do it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be respectful. And I mean, the title is Don't Let the Door Hit You in the Ass, and that's kind of tongue in cheek, right? You
Yes,
don't want
very
to be
much.
a jerky jerk about how you terminate someone. Like,
Right.
you need to be in your integrity. It's not about making it personal.
Yeah.
It's not about kind of getting into things and trying to like hash it out, because when you've made the decision has been made,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And often somebody, when it comes to that point, they know it's not working out, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can kind of start out. So just, want to check in. How do you think things are going here? Right? From your perspective. And then you're going to get a sense of it. And at that point, you're terminating them. But often people are going to know themselves that this is not the right fit. And through that conversation, it comes to like a mutual agreement where it's time for them to move on to something different.
Yes. Yeah. And there's so I learned a connection piece at the Human Awareness Institute, and they say that you don't clear with someone that you don't want to get closer to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you don't go through the trouble of saying these are the problems and this is the issue and whatever if you're
Yeah,
not trying to continue the relationship. And so
exactly.
that applies in this firing scenario.
Mm-hmm.
This is not working out. Your probation period is complete. We are not continuing to hire you or whatever, or
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
hired you and we're realizing it's not a good fit.
yeah.
So, effective immediately or, whatever time frame, you're done. Right.
And generally, I would recommend that it's immediate, right? Especially
Yeah.
people who still have, you don't want to have people who are terminated having access to your passwords or accounts or information or any of that stuff. So you also want to have set it up ahead of time
Yeah.
so
You
that they
revoke their
are like
access
you've
first. Yes.
exactly, right? That you like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that it's happening quickly. So you don't want to like terminate their access and then a couple days later then like have the conversation with
Yeah.
them, because
No.
that's just
And
no
this is
bueno.
No, yeah. And this is why in the next episode, we're going to talk about some of the software and why you use the software you do and things like that. So, but you want to make the decision and implement immediately because that
Hmm.
way, you clean break, right?
And
If you
some
decide to pay
people,
them through the end of the period, it's up to you. But, I mean, if it's not a firing for cause, but just a bad fit, and you want to give
hmm,
them a little extra pay to give them a little cushion to get where they're going, that's your call. But do not leave them with access, right?
yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
was talking about earlier. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I just like lost that. There was a
Sorry.
thought, and it's like, bye-bye, bye-bye now. I'm out playing in the
Bye-bye.
sunshine. Here I am with the butterflies in the sunshine. So,
Yeah, I mentioned software. Maybe that was the thing that triggered it.
well,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
it was before that, but it'll come
Okay.
back if it's
Okay.
meant to be
What
said,
about
it'll
the
come back. Yeah.
clearing and staying in
Oh,
relationships?
right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what it was
Yeah.
is I will see with my clients sometimes that they delay firing because they're worried then that they don't have someone else to take on that work, right?
Right.
So with that, you want to always have someone on the bench, right? So you're always, kind of maybe actively or inactively recruiting, you're always keeping an eye out for who you could hire into that position. You're always having kind of a bench lined up of people that could fill in that, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're tolerating bad behavior, bad fit, bad quality of work because you're afraid it's going to fall back on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big issue. It really is,
Mhm.
because,
Mhm.
when the person quit in the middle of I don't remember if it was the show or the retreat, but somebody quit in the middle of something. And then I was like, ah, crap. Right.
Mhm.
So I didn't have anybody in the background. And I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there. Well, I did. I have my existing assistant who had to come and take over everything. But yeah, if she quit too, then all would be a pain in my ass. But
Mhm.
this is how these things go. But yeah, it's very much about, and we get kind of codependent. We can about, oh, well, what happens if they don't have any money coming in and whatever. Like,
Mhm.
if they know it's not working, they're already out looking for another job. Don't kid yourself.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And
they're already
that's
watching.
not your responsibility. Like, you
No,
don't want to be, cold-hearted, but it's also you need to be clear with the boundaries.
yeah, you're not their parent. You're their
And you're
employer.
not running a charity. You're not running a
Right.
charity. You're running a business.
Correct. Yeah.
Hmm.
All of these things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like that.
And
Um,
and again, this is where a coach, like your coach, can come in to support you in actually practicing the language, right? So if you haven't done a lot of this before and maybe you're nervous as any kind of normal person would be, it can be really helpful to brainstorm, practice it, do some role playing with yourself even, or a friend or your coach, about how you're going to speak it, how you're going to language it, so that you can really get super solid state in your decision and in how you're going to communicate that decision.
yeah. Well, and if you're actually hiring in the US and firing in the US, then you need to know what the laws are if you're actually employing someone as opposed
Mhm.
to having an independent contractor, because the rules are very different for that,
Yeah.
right?
Same in
But if you're
Canada. Yeah.
yeah, if you're actually employing someone, there are specific rules that you have to follow in some states. And there are good policy rules to follow in general around HR practices, right? So, for instance, you never say I'm sorry because that implies it's your fault.
Mm.
And you want to say I'm sorry, right? But you cannot say I'm sorry, because that implies a level of fault that could result in legal action if you are not careful, right? That's what separation.
As an employee,
If they're an employee,
if they're an
yeah, you're
employee.
letting
Yeah.
them go and they're an
Yeah.
employee, you don't say
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Yeah.
just say, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And but the if it's a contractor, you just say, hey, your contract is over, right?
Mhm.
Because they're not an employee. They don't have that. Most states, my understanding, and I'm not an expert, so do your own research, but my understanding is that most states these days are right to work states. They're no fault states. So you there's no requirement to give any notice in either direction, and it just is what it is. So you but it's a good idea if you're going to fire somebody and it's not really early in the process where you can say, look, it just didn't work out. That and if they are a protected class, if they're pregnant or they're sick or they got hurt on the job, or they're a minority, or whatever, then you need to really document the reason for the firing, just to cover your butt in case they decide to sue later. And this is again an employee situation. And contractors, that's not the same, right? Contractors is understood to be a contract period, right? So, but all of these things. So there are outsourced HR firms out there that you can, pay a monthly fee and they'll give you advice on how to do HR stuff. For most small business owners, it's not generally necessary. For the micro business owners, like, if you're a solo entrepreneur or just solo person and one or two, but you're in that scenario, you're unlikely to be actually employing anyone. You're more likely to be working with contractors, right? So, but if you are employing people, might not be a bad idea to look up the fractional HR department people, because they can help
Yeah.
you
And
navigate that.
Yeah, and you can also connect with your local chamber of commerce for guidance or suggestions in terms of resources to support you in that. And this all, I mean, this is kind of why we're doing a whole series on it because it's a process, right? So you want to
Yeah.
be thinking about that at the get-go. Am I bringing on an employee? Am I bringing on a contractor? Are they in the country I live in? Are they overseas? What are the kind of rights and obligations on both parties? And then
Yeah.
how do I navigate that?
Yeah. And so from your end, if you're hiring internationally, from your end, it needs to be clear that it is a contract because you don't want to have to be paying taxes in other countries
Mm,
because you employed someone but it's a contractor position, right? That they have their own thing. So all of these things and more, right?
mhm.
So okay, I think that's what I've got for this episode. Yep, you're
Yep.
nodding. So, all right, guys,
Yep.
don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This completes our holistic hiring series. We will be talking more about the software that we use and things like that going forward in the next episode. So, stay tuned for that. And remember that what you focus on expands, and what you intend is what you create. So, choose wisely. Have a great one.